This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Hello, everybody. I am so thrilled to start this podcast with you. And I'm really thrilled about sharing information and sharing this moment with you. I think this is an amazing way of connecting with you. And well, for those of you who don't know me, I am Isabel Melgarej, your host for the Time to Care, the Caregivers podcast. Today's podcast is about why we have the inability to walk away from difficult conversations and when they are attacking us. So probably you've noticed that for whatever reason, we're having a conversation and then that conversation becomes heated and it just keeps heating up until we end up hurting each other's feelings really bad. So why aren't we able to stop and say, hey, this is not going anywhere. Let's stop this conversation and start again later. I find it really interesting that for whatever reason, we're not able to stop conversations. And I've seen it over and over and over throughout many years and decades with lots of people. And there's something that just makes us stay in that conversation. And what's wrong with us? Honestly, we should be able to walk away from conversations that are hurting us. So I want to talk about this topic today. And one of the things that I want to recommend you is to take a breath every time you're facing these kind of conversations. And another thing I want to recommend you is to set your intention. What happens usually, and I know as caregivers, this happens time and time again. For whatever reason, when we're getting older, we lose the capacity to moderate our comments and to moderate our conversations. We become very blunt in our conversations. We become very blunt in what we're saying. We practically don't care. The older we get, more respect we deserve just because we're getting older. So I think that is part of the problem, that the older we get, us being the leaders of the younger generations, that doesn't mean that we have the power or the right to treat someone wrong. Another thing that happens, and probably you've noticed this and you've read this all over, is that the people that you care the most is the people that are going to hurt you the most. This is because those comments really get ingrained into ourselves and really get ingrained in who we are. And one of the things that happens when we're having a heated conversation with our parents is that we don't know where to stop. As young kids, we were never allowed to walk away from a conversation. If they were grounding us or punishing us, or we were having a serious conversation with our parents, we were never allowed to say, Mom, I don't want to hear you. I'm walking away and we'll talk about this later. I am getting pissed. I'm getting angry at you and this is not working. And I think that's where us not being able to walk away from all these rough conversations that we have with our parents or with our siblings. And I think that this is why having rough conversations with our parents, with our siblings, or with any other loved one impedes us from stopping conversations when they're getting really tough. We can be really blunt in conversations and outside of our family, but when it is our family we're talking about, we become very, very different from how we react in other circumstances. What I usually recommend when we're having this kind of conversations with our loved ones, being our parents, being our siblings, being other family members, or people that we love and care for, I always recommend making ourselves aware of what we're doing. And I know this requires a lot of energy because that requires us to being really present and ourselves aware of what is happening. So we need to put ourselves outside of our situation, outside of that conversation, and being aware of what's happening. Reality is that there is not much out there in which we can create practice on how to become aware when these conversations are happening. Usually, we become aware going with the flow. What I mean with that is that we start having a conversation with someone, and eventually that conversation gets too serious, and then it starts to getting very heated, and then we fight, and then we yell, and then we hurt each other, and then we slam the door because the conflict is not resolved. So we need to start creating awareness in ourselves to know when it is time for us to stop a conversation. And making ourselves aware of what is happening with our surroundings needs a lot of practice. And a lot of practice, I mean, it requires a lot of practice because we were never trained on how to even breathe. We were born and we just keep breathing, but how many of us actually learned how to breathe and with the breath soothe ourselves, and with the breath how to get energized? For any of you who are athletes, if you're an athlete, you learn how to breathe to energize your body, but we never learn how to breathe to soothe ourselves. So that is the first step in this process. We need to become aware and connect with ourselves to understand what is going on. So my recommendation is doing some kind of a meditation every single day in which you become aware of your surroundings. You become aware. So we become aware of what we're looking at, what's surrounding us. Then we become aware of what we're touching, what we're feeling. Like what are the feelings in our toes, in our hands, in our face. Then we become aware of all the noises around us. If there is some birds, if there are dogs, if there's a train, whatever it is surrounding us, what are those noises around us? Then we become aware of what we are smelling. You have a candle nearby. Is there food? Is there trees? Whatever it is that you're surrounded by, what are the smells that attract your attention? And finally, we become aware of what we're tasting. So basically, we try all our senses into what we bring into our awareness. And we need practice with that. And practice comes by doing this every single day. It doesn't take long. You need just a couple of minutes. But by being able to become aware of your surroundings, you're going to become aware of what to do when a heated conversation occurs. Again, this is practice, and we need a lot of practice to get to where we want to be. Once we have identified a difficult conversation, then we're able to react in the most positive way possible. So how are we going to be able to react the best way possible is by knowing ourselves. Many of us use journaling. Well, I personally very rarely journal, but a lot of people feel very comfortable by writing how they feel. So try to make a conscious effort of how you react every time that you have a heated conversation with someone, being that someone, your parent, your sibling, your boss, your friend, your kid. How do you react? Once they have touched the right buttons and once you're like really pissed, what do you do? Think about it and take time to think about it, either by journaling or by just having a cup of tea and becoming aware of your reactions. So that is step number 2. To understand exactly what's going on with you, how you react. You're not going to be able to change things unless you know what is happening. As a chemical engineer, we usually say what is a measure can be. If we don't know how much we're processing, how much are we going to sell? We don't know. So we need to know what's going on. And knowing how we react is the key for you to know when to stop a heated conversation before you react without thinking. Because that's what happens with heated conversations. We start reacting without any knowledge or without putting our head first. And then we hurt everybody's feelings. Be aware of that and then make the conscious effort and prepare mentally for those conversations if they are happening often. So what I mean by that is that you should practice in your head having a heated conversation and stopping it. And how can you stop a heated conversation? Once you're aware of what's going on, take a couple of deep breaths. 4 times in. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you hold it there for 7 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then you release the breath in 8 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is the way that you're going to breathe. Take that breath, calm yourself, and make a decision. Are you able to hold on with that conversation without getting into a point in which you're going to be fighting? Or is it wiser to leave that conversation for another time when both of the parties or all of the parties are calmed down? Don't be afraid of stopping this kind of conversations. It is very wise and it is very brave to stop a conversation midway when probably we just want things solved. But it takes a lot of courage to say, hey, let's stop this conversation and put it for another time so we can actually get into results. Also remind where people are coming from. What are their expectations and what is their background? Many times we forget that our parents are there and that it's really tough for them to be aging and to losing their abilities. For a while they are aware of losing those abilities. Become aware of what is behind this what they're coming from, what they're feeling, and then once you have that, go again, reach out again, and have that conversation that you've been wanting to have. Again, maybe it's going to take several tries to get to a place in which everybody's happy. But try it and let me know what you think. And most of all, thank you so much for listening to my podcast. This is the first episode. I am thrilled to have you here. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and thanks for tuning in.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.